Unfortunately for the world, we are living in precarious times. Better to engage, or better to be involved in the conversation than just to retreat into sort of the abyss. A lot of young people are disengaged from politics because they feel it holds no relevance for them. That's the fault of politicians. It's the fault of politicians to court young people and encourage them to engage in the conversation because they are the future.
I thought it was a beautiful film and one that was poignant and very powerful at the same time. The film deals with themes of, fascism and the political sphere of Argentina at the time, which to the naked eye, I feel that it's hard to not draw comparisons to, the world today. Would you say that comparisons between previous regimes and the political landscape now are fair or overblown?
Well, I think you want your film to resonate in some way, and if that aligns with what's going on, that's all good stuff. If it has no relevance, then you're on a sticky wicket. But fortunately for us, and unfortunately for the world, we are living in precarious times, and as is Tom, Michelle, and the Penguin in our film. So and the film is about not losing heart and not feeling that it's hopeless. Or being cynical, and that it's better to engage, or better to be involved in the conversation than just to retreat into sort of the abyss.
Jonathan, is that something that you'd agree?
Yeah, well, I think that this film, the writer didn't set out to make a cuddly film about a penguin, and now let's find a political situation that we can, reflect at the time. This did happen at that time, at the time of the junta in Argentina. And if there's any point to the film, apart from being entertaining and making people laugh and cry and all that stuff, it's that you will learn. There are lessons to be learned, and you see the school learning the lessons of how to be more compassionate, how to understand other people's problems. And as far as the political situation is concerned, you can look at any point in history of the past 30 or 40 years and say, yes, it's a parallel. But it feels like none more so than now.
I think it's a really important point that you raise in terms of the children of the film are the ones who can actually do a change for good in the long run as well, which I'll move on to in a second. But Steve, what you mentioned in terms of how the film resonates with people and how they will look at it from an outward point of view. And there was that famous line of bad people, I expect them to do bad things, but good people who do nothing, I want to punch them in the face. Do you think that's a really important message for, I suppose, a society today that is struggling to find its voice?
It's a very understandable point of view, and something that I often struggle with. But she's also saying that the character's saying that in anger. And I do understand why people don't want to stick their head above the parapet. But so that was a conscious line. I remember Jeff, sitting in the room with Jeff when he wrote that, and it felt like a really important thing to say. But I don't think I wouldn't judge anyone who didn't do that. But and also, if you have to pick your battles. If you're constantly venting opinions about what's going on, it's diminishing returns. So you have to be judicious. But to have no opinion, when people have no opinion, I find a bit annoying.
Well, I think ordinary people are getting a bad press at the moment, if no press at all. But you have to look and you have to seek out which societies are protesting and marching, and there are thousands of people across Europe especially, and America, who are on the streets making their voice heard, but the mainstream press doesn't report it.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think there's a section of the film where we speak about the young people, and there was a scene where there was 4 generations of family living in the same house, and there was the line said by the father who said, "I'm gonna grow up and I know my kids are gonna live here as well." And it feels very similar to a youth of today that's facing a generation of not being able to afford a house. And can you see the comparisons there as well? Because it's a very poignant point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that does resonate. But yes, I can see that. That's a
And do you feel that's an important point to raise as well, especially in today's age of a youth that may be struggling to?
Yeah, well, it is an important point. It's an important point to raise anyway, because that's the one that the problem in politics at the moment is there's a disconnect, and an understandable one, where young people, a lot of young people, are disengaged from politics because they feel it holds no relevance for them. And that's the fault of politicians, because they often pander to the people they think they will vote for them, and it's a vicious circle, because the people who vote for them tend to be older people, and therefore the government serves them because they know they vote for them, and young people and politicians are disengaged from each other. So it's the fault of politicians to court young people and encourage them to engage in the conversation, because they are the future.
Now, Jonathan, is that something that you can sympathise with?
Yeah, I think it's also interesting, the point about the family and tradition and longevity, because that has certainly broken down, and that frightening statistic that's being bandied, that more young men will have a mobile phone than will have a father figure, role models, and that's a sad fact.
And then final question from me, just in terms of, Steve, we've seen news recently, and you've been very vocal on it, in terms of Windermere, and penguins love water. So in terms of Windermere and that the dumping of waste in that lake, how does that make you feel in terms of?
Well, I mean, like I say, I pick my battles, and I think if they can't, I mean, the whole topic here about failure of privatization, and the fact that these big utility companies pay out dividends to shareholders rather than fulfilling their obligations to the public, which is to keep our waterways clean for people, for recreation, for ordinary people. Because most of the shareholders, they go to Barbados for the holidays. They don't have to bother about the Lake District or Windermere.
And keep penguins away from Windermere, because they'll crap in.
Exactly.
A bit of animal waste is absolutely fine. Okay. Not in my back garden, but in the lake.
Absolutely. But yeah, thank you very much for speaking to us today, and such a beautiful film and powerful at the same time. So,
great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.